Hopefully what is becoming apparent to you today throughout the course of what we've been saying is that we see very strong links here between recovery and desistance, and certainly the brave work, I think you could say, at Charlotte getting published on this and actually saying what's coming first. We're in the middle of trying to get published ourselves on this, and I have to say we've got a pretty deafening silence from the old guard, the desistance academics, and they are very, very reluctant really to engage fully with this debate. I remember a couple of years ago going to a conference, and an unnamed guy, because I better not do anyway, he basically said to me, I am not getting into a chicken and egg discussion. I pointed out to him that I felt that his data, i.e. the videos he was playing, people were talking about getting clean and sober. They used those terms. In fact, one of them was actually talking about going through the 12 steps, and then that the desistance process happened afterwards. But there has been a real reluctance here. So I'm quite proud and I feel very privileged to be working with David and Kathy on really exploring this. And part and parcel of that work that we're doing at Sheffield Hallam is we've had, for the first time in a little while, we've been able to fund some doctoral work as well. So we've got quite a few PhD students coming along and working with some of our partner organisations, SAS being one, and looking to explore these pathways in much more detail. We've just got, we're interviewing actually next week, I think, for another student to look at gender and pathways from recovery to desistance as well. So I'm just going to talk, I've only got a couple of slides here to talk about. What we thought is we'd set up a network, really. So we want to connect people up and down the length and breadth of the UK to start with. Hopefully we'd like it to go worldwide. We've got some international connections already with Charlotte Coleman and some of her colleagues abroad. This is what we're trying to do today. This is a launch really of a doctoral network that's specifically going to look into the connections, the mechanisms that support recovery and desistance. So basically that's the aim, the outline of the aim. And if I could just have the next slide, Andrew. And this is how we were going to try and to achieve this. So we want to give our PhD students ownership of their work, so they're going to come and work within the base that is Helena Kennedy Centre and obviously the Law and Criminology Department at Hallam. We very much want to create, again we talk about this connection and connectedness stuff, so we want our students in the department working with us, and there's really no substitute for being able to tap on the shoulder of a colleague and say, well, what about this? Working at a distance like I did when I did my PhD at the University of Manchester was hard work, sat on my own in my flat, you know, writing up these findings. So we want to create that sort of social supportive network, which is a key finding we keep hearing time and again. So we're going to build a database of existing and interested people, and we're hoping today is going to be the start of that. It's just as simple sometimes as starting with an email list. It really is that. But we also want to get, everything's online now. A few of us have been tweeting, things like that. So we could really do with an online media sort of a presence as well. So we're looking at ways of setting up a Twitter account. We've still yet to decide on some sort of a logo that goes with that. If anybody's got any ideas, please do say, because creativity is not my forte at all. So yeah, pass on any ideas. We've already talked a little bit about, you know, the power really of supportive networks, and we all kind of know that a little bit. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Lauren, one of our PhD students here, Lauren Hall, to come up and tell us a little bit about her work with Jobs, Friends and Houses. David will then close this and then we'll all go for a cup of coffee. So can I have a hand please for Lauren?
Good afternoon everyone, my name's Lauren and I'm a first year PhD student at Sheffield Hallam. I'm just here today to tell you a little bit about the research that I'll be conducting over the next 3 years. My PhD will be looking at the recovery capital of individuals recovering from addiction, and how it's affected and built by different relationships, such as those as and with professionals, volunteers, family and friends in recovery. I'll be conducting my research in Jobs, Friends and Houses, which is a social enterprise that employs ex-offenders and individuals in recovery, and they start as volunteers and they move on to be apprentices and then paid members of staff, and basically they're trained in transferable skills such as building and plumbing, and they are then employed to work on projects in Blackpool such as renovating and letting flats. This initiative is proving to be really successful in supporting recovery. It provides meaningful and highly visible employment. They use lots of logos, and they're really proactive about being seen by the wider community as a recovery community. They also offer social support beyond that which would usually be offered by employers, in that they offer outside activities. It's not just about the job. Recent statistics have actually put the success rates of recovery from alcohol at 95%, which is significantly higher than that of the 10% of the general population. So I think it was Tracy earlier who mentioned that everyone has their own sort of definition of recovery. It means different things to different people, and this has added confusion in terms of achieving coherent support. So for this reason, just for clarity, when I'm talking about recovery today, I'll be referring to the UK Drug Policy Commission definition, which is voluntarily sustained control over substance use, which maximises health and well-being and participation in the rights, roles and responsibilities of society. So I know it's probably already been touched on a bit, but recovery capital therefore refers to the pool of available resources an individual has to help them begin or maintain recovery. One of the aspects of this I'll be looking at predominantly is social capital, and this exists in the social structures between social actors. So I'll be exploring how different relationships contribute differently to an individual's available recovery capital, and how these relationships affect actors' social identities and their sense of group membership, because both of these things have been found to affect recovery. So I have three main aims. The first is to understand the roles that different relationships play in facilitating the availability of recovery capital, and how this consequently affects group membership and social identity. The second is to explore the wider perceptions of stigmatisation and exclusion, and how individuals in recovery believe this impacts upon their access to pro-social relationships, and also how it protects them as well from the perceptions of stigma if they have strong, trusting relationships. And thirdly, to establish the extent to which trusting relationships developed within Jobs, Friends and Houses can extend into the community and operate as a form of bridging capital. So, as I've briefly mentioned, Jobs, Friends and Houses is an innovative business that provides employment for ex-offenders and individuals in recovery and trains them in skills whilst building a physically visible recovery community which invests its profits back into the team. In more individualistic societies such as the West, structures are less interlinked, and so it's harder for people to access the social support that they might need, and it's often those who are most in need of this support that are least able to access them. Jobs, Friends and Houses therefore offers an advantageous environment for individuals in recovery to build and expand their social capital, and it's clear from the success rates that it's having a really positive impact. So I aim to conduct a case study over approximately 12 months and using a mixed methods approach, which not only explores past and existing relationships for these individuals, but also explores the relationships as they unfold, because I feel that the combination of professionals and volunteers who progress to become staff offers a unique opportunity to explore how this change of role may impact upon their existing relationships and whether or not this affects their recovery as a consequence. So, a bit of a rudimentary diagram, I'm afraid. Work by Fukuyama has posited that all groups embodying social capital have a certain radius of trust. That is the circle of people among whom cooperative norms are operative. If a group's social capital produces positive externalities, the radius of trust can be larger than the group itself. Because Jobs and Friends and Houses can be seen as producing extensive social capital through its supportive recovery community, I'm going to be arguing that it produces relationships that have a positive effect that actually affects the wider community around them through their visibility. and this, as a result, emanates far beyond the company's walls. And I believe this is one of the processes which should help to reduce perceptions of stigma for the team members, which should consequently increase opportunities for their recovery community to expand and strengthen their relationships, as there are less perceived barriers to prevent them from doing so. So I've not actually done any official data collection yet, but I've done some sort of fieldwork observations. And during the fieldwork exercises, I've found that people really discussed their strong emotional connection they felt they had to the team. And this connection was sometimes identified as filling an otherwise empty space in terms of available supportive relationships. And some participants even emphasised never having experienced a similar feeling of support from other recovery initiatives before. So Jobs, Friends and Houses can be seen as facilitating the expansion of participants' social capital through their immersion into a pro-social, recovery-orientated community that focuses on much more than just recovery. The setting itself draws a recovery community of shared values into a shared space, and this enhances recovery capital availability by promoting a sense of connection and support, which can allow its members to pull their recovery capital together and share their resources in a sense that they might not be able to do otherwise. So that was just a really quick sort of overview of what I hope to be doing. And I hope that by employing a mixed methods approach, I'll be able to explore the impact of various relationships and recovery for individuals in this setting. And in doing so, clarify which connections can and should be best supported for optimum recovery support. And if you want to know anything more about Jobs, Friends and Houses, that's their website. And thanks for listening.
Right, just a few concluding comments from me about what this network is about. So, to start with Jobs, Friends and Houses, probably, I don't know, maybe 15, 16 months ago, I was invited to go to Blackpool, where I turned up at this derelict house with a group of blokes who were just out of prison, most of whom were ex-addicts or alcoholics, had been brought together by the police in a social enterprise called Jobs, Friends and Houses to say, can you renovate this building and we will turn this into a kind of social enterprise. And the aim of the social enterprise is to build a recovery community, literally, by building houses for people in recovery. And there's a huge overlap with what Chris and Steve were talking about earlier. Folk really benefited from doing stuff that was connected, physical, had some sense of purpose and meaning for them, and that provided them with a living wage and a place to live. It was a real kind of interesting thing. Now, this project would have gone ahead without Lauren's PhD and without my involvement. What can we add to this? What we can add to this is some systematic assessment of effectiveness, because everybody got hugely enthusiastic about Jobs, Friends and Houses as some really exciting new way of doing things. And it has been hugely successful, as Lauren said, but it's not without its problems. And last week, very sadly, one of the volunteers in Jobs, Friends and Houses committed suicide. So there's no panaceas in this process. But what we are able to do is start to say, let's systematically review whether it works or whether it doesn't work, and can we then potentially look to expand it to other places. Now, one of the reasons why we want to set up this network is one of the most eminent and dynamic desistance researchers, Beth Weaver, has just published a short report bemoaning the lack of social enterprises that take ex-offenders and get them involved in workplace projects. Now, as far as that, she's gone to Italy and Sweden to find these things, entirely unaware of the fact that Jobs, Friends and Houses pretty much does what she's looking for already in Blackpool. So why do we want this network? Well, what we want to do is to turn the recovery and desistance picture into a credible academic field, to build up on the body research that people like Charlotte have started to develop, so that we start to understand in a much more nuanced, sophisticated way what the relationship between offending and substance use is, not at the point of onset, but at the point of people coming out the other end. So it's great from our point of view. We have 2 of our own PhD students here, Lauren and Anna. There are other PhD students looking at this subject here today from the universities of Glasgow, Bangor and Teesside. And what we're wanting to do is to start trying to build up this network to make sure this is an area that gets enough academic attention, that we start to build some kind of hub that says, this is an important question, we want people to study it, we want people to get involved. So the primary focus is about creating a hub to ensure the PhD students communicate with each other. There'd be a certain irony if we were studying recovery and we didn't push for connectedness as a core part of this. But so the primary purpose is support, but it's also to help us to say this isn't some kind of brief flash in the pan area of investigation. This is a proper area for study, and to celebrate what's going on, because one of the things that certainly has happened in the recovery field, and there are numerous people in the room here who would reaffirm this, where there's been all kinds of interesting, innovative projects that have been reinvented and reinvented because nobody's ever bothered to evaluate or disseminate them properly. And so part of what we want to do is to make recovery processes better by bringing a proper systematic evidence base to bear. Part of the purpose of SARGE, part of the purpose of this week, is that marriage between the lived experience, professional practice, and what academics and researchers can bring to the table. And in the last part of the session after the coffee break, we'll return to those questions of very much those kind of applied issues. And just before I stop, well, I never stop, but before I temporarily shut up, can I just ask everybody to thank all our speakers from the last session and enjoy your coffee. Thank you.